Hi everyone, I'm Yelena Kraft. I'm lab coordinator and faculty in charge of Biology 313 lab. Less than ideal, I will provide today orientation of the 313 lab spaces and some general guidance on lab safety because we have to move our orientation online. So when you walk in to the 313 lab, you will be going through this door. The room number is 2261. I know you're used to going through other teaching lab doors, but this is the door that all graduate and undergraduate TAs should use. Before you enter the room, we have the safety requirements for use of this space, which means this is the personal protective equipment everyone must wear when they are in the lab spaces, which includes closed-toe and heeled shoes, splash glasses, gloves, and lab coat. All right, come on in. This is our wonderful 313 prep room staff. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Rory Wagner.
Hi, I'm Zoe Goble.
So they will be working in the prep room. If you have questions and I'm not around or your TA is not around, these are the superstars who will help you with anything you might need in the prep room. All right. So this is the lab prep room. This is where we prepare most of our supplies. This is usually where the grading takes place. I will explain different pieces of equipment when we come to that part so you know where to look for certain supplies. Over here is the desktop that is for the prep room. Typically the grading is done on this computer. We print files from this computer and such. Moving here, this is the first teaching lab space. This is where sections 1 through 6 will be teaching, while 1 through 6 and 7 and 8, which meet on Tuesday and Thursday, while sections 3, 5 will be meeting in the other room. So I kind of jumbled that, but you get an idea. Some sections will be in this lab, the other sections will be in the other lab space. So when we are in this laboratory space, obviously it should look familiar. Your graduate TA will be presenting from this teaching stations and your students will be seated over here. So going back to the personal protective equipment, you have to have your own lab coat. You can either bring your own from the last semester, or if you cannot have your own, then you're welcome to use one of ours. The lab coats are found in this cabinet in the adjoining lab, and they're organized by size, so feel free to, they're on the shelves. So moving on, in addition to the PPE, personal protective equipment, you also have to know the location of the safety documents. So any material safety data sheets, those are the sheets that come in with the chemicals. And we need to have them on file in case if there's any chemical exposure or something happens. You will need to locate those sheets for a particular chemical to see what is the first aid that should be applied. So the location of those will be in here. So include fire alarms, which are outside of the lab, fire extinguisher, then there will be a safety shower, safety eye wash station, then there will be a number of spill kits, glass kit, and number of spill kits, glass kit, and first aid kit, that's right. So the first aid kit is here for any minor injuries or things like that. So, in terms of the lab safety, so after the students complete the safety scavenger hunt during their first game, during their first lab, that safety training must be recorded by having each student sign up the safety data sheet with training sheet, which graduate TA will provide for your sections. Moving on. Some other safety considerations. When you are in the lab, no food or drink or medication is allowed. So your personal belongings will be kept in the prep room. And if you do need to take a medication, not a problem, or your student needs to take a medication, there's no problem. They will just have to step outside of the laboratory, take their medication, take the food item, and eat or drink or whatever it's necessary, and then come back promptly. Cleanup. So in terms of a cleanup, we keep, Jade, you can turn around and you can see, we tend to keep the laboratory spaces neatly organized, and that is for a reason, because this laboratory houses many different sections, and if we do not keep the spaces organized, then that kind of trickles down onto other sections having to clean up before they start their work. So we have to keep the spaces neatly organized, and each station should look like this when they start work and when they're ready to leave. The pipettes will be organized like such. All of the containers would be closed. The trash, any lingering trash at the bench should be promptly disposed in appropriate locations, and I'll talk about that in more details. Now, for some lab experiments, you will be asked to have ice. Usually it's the first sections that get the ice from the ice room, and I'll take you to a tour so you can see where it is. If you are the last section of the day, that would be section 5, section 6, or section 8. For those last sections in the day, I ask please to empty all the ice buckets, store them on the drying racks, and then all of the reagents that would have been stored in those ice boxes should be kept in appropriate places. Usually they're either in the cold room or -20 freezer. Okay, now in this lab, you notice we use a lot of consumables. There will be labs where we have really short turnaround between the lab sections coming in, lots of supplies being used. So if you run out of gloves, tips, water, toothpicks, or even ethanol bottles, all of those supplies you can take only when the containers are emptied out from these glass cabinets, and they're organized and visually displayed so you can really see what is stored on each shelf. I do ask please to take the new container only after the previous container has been emptied out. So if a new container is added, only pick up a supply from this closed glass shelf. It will have a tape. This is what we call an autoclave tape. That indicates, if it has these black stripes, indicates that this material has been sterilized properly at the proper temperature and pressure, and it's ready for a use. If it doesn't have a tape like this, I would stay away of it using those kind of supplies. In general, anything that you see in these cabinets over here will have this tape indicating that material is sterile and it's fine to give to your students. Well, then you may ask me, what do we do with these containers? So if the student has contaminated a water bottle, or we run out, all of the tips have been used, all of the empty containers should be returned into the prep room around the corner. We have a metal shelf. You can store them here, and then the prep room staff will take it from there, autoclave it, and refill the glass cabinets. Bottom line, please do not grab supplies from the prep room, as it may not be sterilized. So with that, that's really all that you need to know about teaching lab spaces. I will talk a little bit more about the prep room. So you will walk into this room the first time you come in the day to teach your, or TA your station, your sections. So you may need to have some tags done under the computer there to grade or assign grades, or you may need to help with some light setup for the upcoming lab. So for Wednesday, Thursday, that's when we start our labs this semester. We have here on the counter College Solutions, and if you recall your very first labs, this is used to have students help with pipetting, getting those essential skills in, maybe help practice cereal dilution so you can visually see how this College Solution is being thoroughly diluted. In this prep room, over here, we have a mini fridge. Some chemicals may be stored here, so when the TA is asking you to pick up a supply from a mini fridge, that's what they mean. This would be a mini fridge. Over here is a freezer, so this keeps things really, really cold. It tends to move. It's not very lockable. But this is -20 freezer, and majority of the supplies that you're going to use in this lab will be stored in this freezer. So it keeps temperature very, very cold, -20. And the supplies in this freezer are organized by the module. The top shelf is for genotype me, middle shelf is for regulation and protein, and bottom two shelves are for the yeast module. So please, if you're not sure what supplies you should be looking for, ask your TA for help, because we store here supplies for all sections of this lab, and if they get disorganized, it can impact the work in those sections. So the supplies are here. This is the genotype me shelf, regulation and protein, and then the yeast module. When it's time to do the work for a particular lab, the TA might point out, please bring me the primers or go tag MasterMix so you will know or have an idea where those things are. In any case, if you have questions, ask your TA to specifically point out for supplies they are asking you to bring them. So note the location of a -20 freezer. Then over here, these two incubators that have yellow labels, these are incubators, not a freezer. This is an incubator. It means to keep the temperature at it keeps the temperature at a certain value. So these two are set at 30 degrees, and we use 30 degrees to grow yeast. And yeast is used to grow, we grow yeast as a part of the lab skills module. So the very first module where your students do serial dilution and streaking, this is where you will place their plates, and then you will also use these freezers when you, at the end of the semester, when we participate in the research-based yeast module. The plates that students will be using will need to combine in the section tops, and then those section tops should be put in the shelf, the door closed, and usually yeast grows anywhere between 2 to 5 days depending on the strain. So those are the main pieces of equipment in the prep room. Over here, we may have sometimes certain plates that we are pouring, but in general, we do not store plates in this lab. Some additional things, you likely won't need to use it, but if something happens and you run out of the pre-allocated supplies that we left out for you, these shelves house also additional materials for the module. These two are for genotype me, this is for protein module, and the bottom one is the yeast module. And this is, in a nutshell, the prep room space in the 313 lab. I will take you for a tour of other spaces that you should know about that also are served or used by 313 lab. So around the corner from the prep room, you're walking straight down this hallway, and the first space that we are going to see is going to be a cold room. In the cold room, we keep supplies such as solid media, so plates, agar plates, liquid media, any cultures will be stored in that room. And so it's important that you know the location. So you'll go around the corner here. And this is the cold room that belongs to Biology 313 lab. So the room number, if you need it, is 2233. Now, before I walk in there, I will let you know that there is some control panel over here, and that control panel ensures that a temperature is at 4 degrees at all times outside of this cold room, so it's really, really cold. It is important for you to go with a purpose, grab your supplies, and leave fast. If you leave the door propped open for too long, the temperature will increase really rapidly, and that will set off the alarm. So come here with a purpose, knowing what you should be grabbing, where to grab the supplies, and then leave. So I will show you in here the way we organize the supplies. So the supplies for any week will always be found here. There's a shelf that's called current week supplies, and all of the supplies that you will need for that week will be stored here. So for next week, we start with the lab skills module. We would need cultures, so 1 culture per student. We have here stop plates that students will be using to do the streaking. We also have examples of the streak plates so they can understand how streaking is performed. And we also have example plates demonstrating serial dilution. So 1 to 10, 1 to 100, and 1 to 1000. Now your students will only be plating 1 to 1000 dilution on the plate, but there's 2 sets of these plates just to show it to your students so they can visualize how less and less colonies end up growing as you increase the dilution factor. And at the bottom are YPD plates. You will need 2 for each student. One is to perform a serial dilution, and the other is to do the streaking. So all of the supplies for any week will be always found on this shelf. And if you notice, I am inside. I'm pointing where the supplies are. The door is closed behind me. That is absolutely fine because you can open the door at any point, but it's important to close so the temperature does not go up and the alarm does not get activated. Also, please make sure never to touch that button because that can also activate the alarm. The last space in this building is that you need to know the location of is the autoclave room. And in that room, there's an autoclave machine that we use to sterilize supplies. You will not need to use the autoclave, but in that room, we have an ice machine, and you will frequently visit the ice machine to bring ice for your lab sections. So this is that autoclave room. It's in 2228 in Bessie, and the sign is propped up by or attached by EH&S. There is a regulation that mandates that this door be closed at all times. So when you leave, please make sure the door is completely closed to this room. Now, to enter this room, you will need a key. It's locked at all times. The key will be provided by your graduate TA. So this is the room where we grab our ice from. You will take the lid. We have the scoop. Usually you will bring the cart, and the ice buckets will be loaded on that cart, and then we'll scoop up ice in each of those buckets. If you are first section scooping the ice, try to fill that ice box compact, so that ice can stay really nice and cold, and most sections in the day can end up using it. After you get done, ensure that scoop is out, the lid is closed, and that this door, when we leave, closes tightly. So you will need to pull it to close it tightly. And that really concludes the tour of the spaces that you will need to use for Biology 313 lab as a TA. Anything else that is specific to any daily task is something that your TA will address at that time. So thank you for a tour.